water and mental public health and well-being, as well as physical health. So thank you, Sarah.
Surprised by that quotation from the poor person who's been flooded. I think it must be the most devastating experience for anyone. Any questions for Sarah at this point? Yes?
Just to validate your work, Sarah, I've done work with Natural England to do with walking your way to health, and with Mind, who have been working in County Durham. The British Trust for Conservation Volunteers have been taking people's mental health problems into the outdoors to do green therapy. And obviously I'm aware of the fact that Professor Chris Baines has done work to link trees in the urban environment with better mental health. I'm just thinking, if you put trees and water together and you put them in a hospital setting and you demonstrate tonight the clinical efficacy of people getting out of hospital quicker, then the whole design of the urban environment where hospitals are placed will completely change. So I hope that's covered in your book, and if not, that will be in your second book.
Well, very much so. I'm pleased to hear it, because that's exactly the kind of argument the book puts forward. Yes.
Can we restrict ourselves just to direct questions at the moment, and then there'll be more time for discussion at the end? Any more questions?
I've got one.
Yes.
Are there any studies currently on the relation between the quality of drinking water and cognitive mental health?
Yes, I didn't mention that because in a sense it's a physiological problem, physical problem, but it's true that one of the reasons why companies like the Northumbria Water Company will be concerned about the quality of pipe work, for example, is that there are obviously risks, for example, in terms of lead in the water, which has been shown in the past to be important, for example. So there are ways that the quality of water may impact on the physiological function of the brain, which may then be important to the mental state, yes.
I'll get a study guide off you later on that if I can.
Okay, well that might be good to come back to.
Can I just ask, with regard to the mental health issues that you've been talking about, children spend an awful lot of time in close environments in schools with no access to natural space. Could that be a precursor to like mental health problems later?
Well, it's an interesting proposition, isn't it? I can't present research which shows whether that is actually the case or not, but there is quite a lot of evidence that that the natural environments are important. Note, though, that that space that all those children are enjoying in the middle of Montpellier, that's not a natural environment. They're actually quite a restrained space. So there may be imaginative solutions which don't involve getting people right out of the fields. Thank you.
Last question.
Is there any difference between the effects of water when it's fresh water within a community in the countryside and seawater, which is equally hazardous in many ways?
Well, I think in terms of the psychological effects, a lot depends, really, as I think was suggested, on the quality of the water, and as we've shown, sort of the things that are in and around the water. So if it's nice, clean seawater, obviously some of those scenes which were shown to be attractive to people are seawater scenes, and that's as attractive as inland water. So I think more important than whether it's saline or pure water is the question of whether it's attractive from the point of view of the other attributes that we discussed. But it's a good point, Malcolm.
Thank you, Sarah. We'll move on to our third speaker, John Bridgman. We've brought him up all the way from Birmingham because of his cutting-edge work in water engineering. And so, John, let me hand over to you.
Yes, so good evening, everybody. I was asked to come and talk this evening about the health implications of water treatment and sort of providing a sort of engineered potable water. And I must thank the Forum and the Institute for the invitation, which I happily accepted. When I was told I got 15 minutes to do that, that sort of focused the mind somewhat, because with my virulent strain of verbal diarrhea, it usually takes me 15 minutes to introduce myself. But well, I'll do my best. We'll see how we go. Everybody in this room today has been affected by potable water in some way. We've all got up and turned a tap on and had a wash or a shower or something. statements I hesitate to make in front of undergraduate students, but I feel safe to make it this evening. And normally we, well, virtually every time we will produce, we find our glass filled with a very palatable looking glass of water, free from potentially harmful bacteria or Cryptosporidium oocysts. However, from time to time, we may come across glasses that look like this, very, very rarely, particularly in this case. But this one here is actually just an instance of air being in water, and that will clear from the bottom very, very quickly. This one rather less palatable, however, not necessarily unsafe to drink. And the point was made by Sir Derek earlier that unpalatable looking water can still be relatively safe to drink. That's what I've got across here, but none of us would choose to drink it. And so, for those reasons, we have quality standards for our potable water. I'm not going to go into any detail about standards and water law and such like, but we have directives that are set down by the EU, transposed into international policy, and so we have things like standards that say we shouldn't have any E. coli in our water, we have levels of iron and of manganese and such like, and it's the water company's job to try and to make sure that they meet those standards, and the standards are there for very good reasons. One of the benefits or downsides, depending on which you look at it, of going last, is that people have already stolen some of the thunder, so I'll just whip through this quite quickly. We know that worldwide 5 million people die each year from water-related diseases. We know that there are 2.2 million deaths a year, mainly in infants, from diarrhoea related to water-related disease. I mean, the horrible fact there is that one child dies every 15 seconds as a result of water-related disease. Most of this, of course, happening in developing countries, where 80% of all diseases are water-related. And the recent publication from the World Health Organization, UNICEF Joint Monitoring Programme, says that 900 million people lack access to improved water supply and 2.6 billion lack access to improved sanitation. For the word improved there, that's what we would call normal, a decent water supply and a decent sanitation system. However, we're rather more blessed in the UK, thanks to a large extent to John Snow, who we've already heard about this evening. It was Snow who first identified the link between the cholera outbreaks that were rife in London in the 19th century and the water supply, particularly the water supply that had been infected by waste. And Snow said in his sort of seminal report on cholera, water serves as a medium to propagate the disease. That's exactly what was happening. As a result of the work of Snow and also of Robert Koch, one of the founders of microbiology, we've had continuous disinfection in England, at least, of our water for almost 100 years. Disinfection in water is there for two reasons. The first one is that it's there, as I've said there, as a final barrier. It's a barrier to pathogens from entering our water supply. That means from when it leaves the water treatment works, when it goes into the pipe network. The disinfection is there to make sure that pathogens don't get in there. But it's also there for another reason, and that is that the water may take some time to get to your tap from the water treatment works. And what we need to do is to make sure that the water in the pipes doesn't get reinfected. And so we maintain a disinfection capability within the distribution system. So two key reasons for having disinfection within our water treatment and distribution systems, which I'll return to later. And so people like me have made careers out of designing and building water treatment works like this, medium-sized water treatment works in the Midlands, where disinfection is employed as the final barrier before it goes into supply. Now you'll be aware that in the developed world, the principal disinfectant, of choice is chlorine. Chlorination used for disinfection isn't an instantaneous process. It takes a certain amount of time. And the effectiveness of